Going on, everybody? How is the world treating you on today? I am Dr. Chris Featherstone here. Absolutely, I'm Dr. Chris Featherstone. All right. Yeah, let's rock to this one today. Come on then, y'all. Yeah, all right. Filling up. Let's do it. Share the link. Share time. Yeah, man. Yeah. It's share time, y'all. Go ahead and share the link. Repost on Twitter, X. Copy the link on YouTube and share it amongst everybody. Let's have some really, really good numbers for today. Oh, well, I see that you guys are sharing. Thank you very much. We're one step closer to 1,000 on YouTube as well, man. So let's do it, man. some quality work that's being handed to you every single week, man. If you like what you see, which people do every single week, you guys come in here and you don't drop off, and you increase throughout the show, and I'm so blessed that this show never tapers off, and that's great, man. So clearly something I'm giving you, some information I'm giving you is worth you staying around the entire time. So thank you very much, man. Be sure to hit that subscription on YouTube so you can get notifications. We're going to have a really good class today. Man, I was intrigued by this topic yesterday, actually. I thought about this like over the past couple of weeks with this European tour, but a couple of other people's like added to it and brought it up. And I'm like, that's interesting. I'm not going to just completely say, yes, it's true, or really, I don't know what, I wouldn't even say that it's true, right? Like I wouldn't even say, yeah, this is facts. But some people through messages and through my live stream yesterday, they brought this topic up, and I said, you know what? It's not about me agreeing or disagreeing so much with it. It's more about me breaking it down from a psychological standpoint. So that's what I do here on Pancakes and Powerslams. I have psychology classes about really interesting topics, tie them in with pro wrestling. And so that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk about the psychology of racism. How about that? The psychology of racism. So be sure to share the link so we can get some amazing live interaction, just like we do every single week. So with that being said, of course, I will be reading the messages after my class, and be sure to hit up Ask Doc, hashtag Ask Doc if you want it on the screen. There you go. Hashtag Ask Doc is the way to go on the screen. Put it on your comments. Put that on the comments section and tag that in then I'll go ahead and put you on the screen. All right. Let's talk about the psychology of racism. If you're on Twitter right now, hit that repost, share. Don't be stingy. Share the class live with everybody else. If you're on YouTube right now, don't be stingy. Share this with other people. All right. So the psychology of racism. Racism is defined as by the American Psychological Association as a system of structuring opportunity and assigning value based on phenotypic properties, which ranges from daily interpersonal interactions shaped by race to racialized opportunities for good education, housing, employment, and other resources, and unfairly disadvantages people belonging to marginalized racial groups. All right, so that is a psychological backdrop on what racism is by definition. Now, there's so many different nuances, and we'll get into a few nuances, and we'll also tie them back into this European crowd conversation, this controversy that's coming on with this European crowd, which is really interesting. I was like, I'm going to break that down a little bit more because it's something that I subtly noticed, and some other people started bringing that topic up. I'm like, okay, I'm going to break it down more, and it's really, really interesting. So with that's just a backdrop, just a normal, just a regular backdrop of racism. And again, very nuanced, very, very different nuances, very, very, very plentiful. And the level of nuances, and I'll break down different forms of racism as well, and how it's led over to the the arguments from some people when it comes to the European crowds and how they treated Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill during this European tour. So it's also known, it's also can be defined as a form of prejudice that generally includes negative emotional reactions to members of the group, of the particular marginalized group, acceptance of negative stereotypes, and racial discrimination against individuals. And of course, in some cases, it can lead to violence, unfortunately. Now, when I mentioned phenotypes, and basically there's genotypes and phenotypes, and I actually had to learn this quite a bit when it comes to psychology. And we typically, back in my psychological studies, when I had to study genotypes and phenotypes, it was more from like a family tree-ish perspective. And when we learned about genotypes and phenotypes, phenotypes is more of like outward appearance, like observable characteristics of an organism or a human being, such as behavior, hair color, skin tone. Of course, that's one of the most popular phenotypes. And we also learned, genotypes and phenotypes when it came to like we break those down into it's called genograms. And so when we broke it down the genograms, it was more than just a family tree, but like if someone had like a physical condition, if someone had like an illness, if someone had, what was the cause of death? Like stuff like that is important when it comes to like different breakdowns of family, and understanding more even from a genetic standpoint, and even from an ancestral standpoint of possible reasons why people have different conditions and diagnoses. And we had to break all that down in my psychological studies when I was pursuing my PhD, but it paid off because that stuff is actually pretty prevalent when it comes to psychodynamic work and psychodynamic interventions. And so it's actually pretty cool to learn. As when I was a student, I wasn't a big fan of it because it seemed just way too meticulous. But in hindsight, as I'm teaching more of that and continue studies and things like that, is actually pretty prevalent. But the phenotypes is basically the observable attributes or characteristics of the person. And so basically, unfortunately, what we see when it comes to racism is that someone automatically has, or an individual and also a group automatically has a negative stereotype, a negative impression, a negative thought, just automatically based on phenotypic structures, phenotypic characteristic, phenotypic observation. So if your skin tone is dark, therefore you are poor or you're inferior. So basically that's how racism from a traditional perspective is oftentimes defined, from a psychological standpoint, from a sociological standpoint. That is like a traditional way of breaking down racism. Now, here's the thing when it comes to racism, especially if you're thinking about from a timeline perspective, you're thinking about 1800s, early 1900s, when it even came to like the eugenics movement. And then you came to, slavery and politics and things like that, late 1800s, around 1860, so to speak. And you're talking about the Emancipation Proclamation days, even from a political standpoint, and how that transcended to government pressured decisions, particularly by Abraham Lincoln, to be able to have a different perspective on slavery, but at the same time, lower class, poor people were still thought of as second class citizens, or and that was an outcasted, in many ways. And more smarter, more intelligent, blacks were thought of as, okay, well, we can actually work with you. We can actually use you for the military. That was actually one of the talking points back in the late 1800s when it came to politics. We can actually use the smarter blacks for the military because they're smart. It's crazy how, again, phenotypes generated the craziest, just horrible prejudices against skin color, man. It was just nuts when it comes to a historical standpoint. It's become more nuanced because, yes, you can. Overt racism is taboo in many ways. It has become more taboo, although there's still, sundown towns, and there's still, implicit bias that's still explicit and overt in many ways. You still have rallies and things like that. That's still, because of freedom of speech, it's still allowed. You know what I mean? So it's definitely not over. But it's become more taboo as far as just blatant, overt. However, the problem with that is it's become more nuanced, and it's become more implicit in many ways. And so I'm going to break those implicit biases or implicit forms of racism down for you. So basically, it really can be a multi-level phenomenon. And there's three specific levels when it comes to racism. You have a micro level, which is expressed by individuals. You have a meso, what's called a meso level, which is basically influenced by institutions. And you also have a level of racism that's embedded by the entire culture, which is called a macro level. And so here's the thing: when it comes to these particular levels, they're not stratified. They're actually what's called bidirectional. They can overlap, they can interlope, they can change. Like, someone can have an individual sign of bias or racist tendencies toward a phenotype, a particular phenotype, and they can start engaging into groupthink culture and being a part of the crowd. That's the reason why people join, different racial hate groups and things like that, because then it transformed into from a micro level to a macro level. And if there's a group of you, that are racist, and you feel more comfortable being around, organizations, you join Facebook groups and things like that, it becomes a cultural, it's a meso level. So it's bidirectional. It's not just the stratified thing that you're either graduating and you can't get back to, or you just stay at an individual perspective and you can't become cultural. No, it intermingles. And it's a really interesting concept. And it's unfortunate because, again, you have to think about racism as a form of very, very ignorant, phenotypic discrimination. You're discriminating someone based on a phenotype. So because someone's behavior, skin color, hair color is different than yours, you're making an ignorant judgment based on that person's phenotype. So knowing that, what happens is, when it comes to more of a group perspective, you start to have confirmation bias and cognitive dissonance. So even if you don't necessarily want to believe in a certain way, it's still there. It's still inherent in many ways because of your particular phenotype. So you start to translate it in more of a group setting because it's not necessarily overt, or you don't necessarily want to show it or showcase it, because you know that you'll be ostracized if you overtly do it. However, if it's covert or if it's within a group setting, that's where a swarm, so to speak, when it comes to particular actions, or if it's just a straight up groupthink mentality, then you start to feel a lot more comfortable with having certain characteristics and certain behaviors, more outward behaviors toward a particular culture. So it's similar to racial prejudice when it comes to this particular levels of racism, and it's similar to racial prejudice, and it's based on a persistent in-group preference. And we'll talk about in-group, out-group. There's a lot of really cool psychological concepts when it comes to the in-group, out-group mentality. But the difference is, though, when it comes to the preference standpoint, when it comes to the particular prejudices, is dislike or discomfort with out-group members is further complicated by feelings of in-group superiority. So that's really one of the biggest difference when it comes to like prejudice versus racism. Like racial prejudice is, okay, I'm not comfortable around different phenotypes. I'm not comfortable around different people who look different than me, whose hair color is different than me. I mean, there's been many studies of different things, levels of feeling like there's higher levels of danger, feeling like there's just overall levels of discomfort when it comes to being around people with different colors. And again, unsubstantiated from a personal standpoint, unsubstantiated. And media, a lot of things are influencing a lot of the reason why people think that the way that they think. And so it does have a very negative impact toward someone who's dealing with implicit, bias or in-group prejudice or in-group favoritism, especially when it comes to a racism standpoint. That starts to really get in someone's mental and someone's psyche. And then they start to become more comfortable with expressing themselves in a more racial and prejudice way. So at the individual level, we talked about, micro, meso, and macro. Now, macro and meso levels are more blatant in many ways. So say, for instance, the Klan, more blatant, they're very overt. There's many other, very pro, like extreme racial groups and things like that. They're very overt. There's nothing subtle about where they stand and what they're all about, and they really don't have any shame to express themselves in that way, unfortunately. But they don't have any shame to express themselves in that way. But a lot of times when it comes to an individual level, a lot of people do experience levels of shame when it comes to expressing how they really feel about different phenotypes, about different skin colors, specifically African-American skin colors, and not just African-American, minority skin colors as well. And so what happens on the individual level, negative attitudes, feelings, or behaviors are directed at the targets of racism. And again, backdrop, different phenotype, therefore lower in class, lower, more of a poverty level, lower intellect. Those are things that oftentimes come with just automatic thoughts of people with in a different phenotypic, characteristics than the majority culture has. And it can either be intentional, like I'm saying, like I was expressing, and that's called dominative racism. And like I said, we see this with different cultures that are very prevalent, very prominent. We know what they're about. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We understand. However, though, this nuance is really important when it comes to an individual factor, a highly important part of the individual perspective. There's also an element called aversive racism. It's aversive racism, and that's racism that is either unintentional or unaware. So think about aversive racism like you have you're a CEO of a company, right? And there's actually studies to show this too. I mean, applications and things like that. When people look at applications, there's been studies to show implicit bias when it comes to different things that affects the way there's been studies that affects the way that they who they choose for grants, who they choose for loans, who they choose to be accepted into colleges, who they accept for jobs. That's a big one. Those are all implicit biases, but oftentimes it's just aversive racism, because from that particular standpoint, it's like someone who's like, okay, so I'm a white CEO, for instance, and then I'm interviewing two people for the same job, and one's white, one's black. I'm a white CEO, and they both did a really good job. You can only choose one, and both have a wonderful pedigree. Both have a wonderful both have a wonderful resume, both have wonderful interviews. However, you're choosing the majority phenotype because you want someone to relate to, and you feel as if, and there's been studies that show this, you feel that this particular majority phenotype is going to be higher intellectual, more highly intellectual during your interpersonal conversations at work. That's aversive racism. So you want to start, you want to avoid that. And there's different nuances. There's even more nuances. A psychologist, he's a professor at Yale, I believe, Dr. John Dovidio, he goes further and explaining aversive racism. He states this. He says, people still have negative feelings, but they may not be aware of those negative feelings. Instead of feelings of hatred, is more like feelings of avoidance and discomfort. So that's an interesting part of aversive racism as well. He also says this. He says, one of the consequences of aversive racism or unconscious bias is that you don't discriminate in a situation where what's right and wrong are clearly defined, because you know what you're supposed to do when you do it. Let me break that down a little bit more. And there's a second half that's really important too. Let me break that down a little bit more. So basically, in particular situations where if you were to make this decision, like that would show racism in this particular situation, in this particular event, in this particular instance, that racism would be shown. Racial bias would be shown if you decide to pick this person because they're white. If you decide to make this comment because this person is black. You start to do this like like, okay, I'm not gonna say that. I'm not gonna use this degrading term. I'm not going to use this offensive term because I know good and well that I'm not going to say this thing to this person because it's clearly racist. However, though, if I want to put in a rap song, if I want to insert it into, purposely insert it into a line, a skit, or something like that, then it's like I'm subtly doing this thing because of underlying feelings that you have. Now, of course, this doesn't always mean that just because you're putting this in a line or saying this because it's a rap song or putting this in a skit doesn't always mean that you're racist automatically. However, there are a lot of very aversive types of things, types of instances where people do decide to put those things in lines or put those things in skits just because of the oomph that they want to make of how they feel, of how some inner turmoil, some inner tension of how they really feel, and still battling with the ignorance of judging someone based on their phenotype. And so he did ask by saying this. He said, but it usually happens when you can justify a response on the basis of some factor other than race. Now, that's the interesting part there. Going back to the interview, for instance, someone decides to choose the white applicant over the black applicants, and the person can say, yeah, well, I really liked how this person intellectually responded to my questions. This person was sharper with answering my questions, and this person had good questions, follow-up questions at the end of the interview. Now, this person can say that, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily true, because the other person could have had this same exact stuff, the same exact qualities of the interview that were great, but it's other than race though. So you're using like a backdoor route to justify this decision-making, which was based on aversive racism. And so when it comes to unconscious bias, aversive racism, that is really interesting when it comes to justifying, for instance, the reason why European crowds during this loop were booing Bianca Belair. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. Now, again, this isn't to, say I 100% agree with what people were saying to me and people were saying on my live streams. It's an argument as to how it could be the case. I'm not saying that it is the case. I am saying that this is a psychological class of how it could be the case, and how these little subtle thoughts that some people are thinking, it might be bigger than you think. Implicitly, perhaps unconsciously, perhaps aversively, but it's worth exploring. So that's where my angle is when it comes to this class today. So again, going back to my work scenario and tying that into the current triple threat match right now, with Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley, Io Sky. Now, Bianca Belair, great merch seller, amazing with the kids, just incredibly athletic, a freak of nature. There's no weaknesses in her. Some people talk about her mic work, but I mean, a lot of people within WWE doesn't have the strongest mic work, and I do think the Bianca Belair's mic work is good, not great, but it is good. it's got some room for improvement, but she's pretty solid and she gets what she needs to get across. And so when it comes to that particular instances, it's like, okay, she won the Elimination Chamber match. She has her ticket to WrestleMania. She was out supporting both Io Sky and Rhea Ripley. She's upset because you got someone in the match trying to force herself in the match, Rhea Ripley. She lost the match. Like, she lost. And now she's upset. And then she lost the DQ. She actually slapped Bianca Belair. But for some odd reason in this European tour, they start to boo Bianca Belair, and everything, nothing of what she's doing is what a heel would do. If, to be honest with you, Rhea Ripley is actually the one who's doing most of the heel work throughout this entire story right now the past few weeks. She's the one doing the heel work. She's the one coming out, forcing her name on a contract. She's the one coming out, power bombing people through tables. She's the one coming out and causing the chaos, but she's the one who's getting cheered. And she lost the match fair and square. It makes no sense logically why people are booing Bianca Belair, especially when they cheered her at the Elimination Chamber. Before the European tour, she won the match. She was cheered at the Elimination Chamber. And Naomi's the one who's the heel. And Naomi was the one who basically said, I did it for The Rock. I did it for the people. She's the Rikishi to Bianca's Rock, basically, right now. And out of all of that, Bianca Belair is still getting booed. And so it's like, that's an interesting factor, because a lot of the criticism is, well, Bianca Belair botches. Well, so does everybody else. I mean, Rhea Ripley's is amazing. She's, she passed the airport test, amazing character. She's just top notch as a person. But at the same time, it's like, I've seen plenty of matches where Rhea Ripley's botched. And Rhea Ripley's been the same character forever. And same with the Io Sky, been the same character forever. And she's botched a bunch of times. So you can't have that argument with just Bianca Belair, because you would have to have that argument with everybody else. And so I'm going to, eliminate the botch stuff, eliminate the character stuff, because you have that same argument with everybody else. So what is the argument? That's where that's where the conspiracy theorists come in and say, well, I think that the argument's pretty obvious, Doc. And I say, it's worth an argument. And I'm going to give you some psychological, perspectives on this particular argument when it comes to aversive or unconscious, aversive racism or unconscious bias. Here's some tools to put in your toolbox to strengthen your argument, if you want to take that argument. I'm not saying that I'm particularly taking this argument. However, if this is your argument, here's some tools in the toolbox. And I do think it's important, even now, to this day, when you're dealing with interpersonal communications, and it's really important from a macro perspective. Really, from a macro perspective, and how you handle conversations with different people. I do think it's very important to really learn how to interact with people who are racist and prejudiced based on, again, their ignorant perception of a certain phenotype. Very ignorant perspective. Now, there could be so many there could be so many reasons why. There can be so many reasons why, the person is booing the person. But I would say that, it is important for you to understand the dynamic of dealing with someone who has racist tendencies or is a flat out racist. But again, what we're seeing nowadays is more of a covert form of racism and more of the aversive perspective than more overt levels. So, in closing with this class, two factors can come into when it comes from a crowd perspective. So, again, with this argument of the European crowds are booing Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill, that's another one. That's another thing. Liv Morgan has been the biggest heel, one of the biggest women's heels of the past year. And Jade Cargill came in, people were saying she cooking, and people like, her mean streak especially when it comes to, attacking Naomi. And then she gets booed too when Liv Morgan, pins her, and Liv gets cheered. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's really, really interesting, man. And so I do think it's one of those things that a lot of times when you think about those two factors, is the reason why Bianca and Jade are getting booed from a crowd that, these are the heels, especially Liv Morgan, clear-cut heel, but she's getting cheered in the European crowd. When in America, she gets jeered quite a bit. So, it's an interesting concept, man. Like, again, from a group perspective, we got social identity theory and the concept of in-group, out-group. I talked about in-group, out-group before. Social identity theory is so when you're talking about group superiority, you have those two key elements when it comes to that. Social identity theory is aspects of self that relate to group membership. And then you have in-group, out-group. So people oftentimes compare members of their group, which is an in-group, to other members, which is an out-group. And it not only appears in racial discrimination, but it also can compare to from a cultural context too. In-group, out-group is it's a really social, it's a huge social phenomenon. It's really interesting because a lot of people don't understand really the psychoeducation when it comes to in-group, out-group. But a lot of times, man, in-group, out-group context, and even from a social identity context, I feel this way. That's what I was talking about before. I feel this way. And there's other people who feel this way. And so my individual self relates to this group membership. And so I relate. That's my identity is tied in often to a lot of what they're saying. And that's not only with racism, that's with tribalism, definitely. That as well. That's with any type of, classism, that's another one. I mean, there's a lot of different elements when it comes to social identity theory and in-group, out-group. So a lot of times, from a classism standpoint, thinking people are, who are in lower statuses than you or dumber and shouldn't even be talked to from an intellectual standpoint, you automatically assume, that they are not as intellectual just because they aren't as rich as you are. When it comes to tribalism, you're thinking that the people out there, the out group, they don't understand it like y'all do. We see this all the time when it comes to wrestling, when it comes to pro wrestling, tribalism like crazy, especially in the social media universe, in the social media bubble. We see tribalism quite a bit. We see so much of an in-group, out-group, so much of that concept of in-group, out-group. Yes, it is. It is a a racial construct in many ways and many times, but it's not exclusively a racial construct in many ways. And so then you can create the overlap of, okay, so since European crowds has a dominant, a phenotypic, characteristic, then you can implicitly or even unconsciously add the in-group, out-group concept when it comes to certain other phenotypic, characteristics. So therefore, I'm going to unconsciously boo you. And again, that's another interesting possibility that can come with this. And so it's a really interesting dynamic when it comes to why the European crowds. Like, I was thinking about that, and I just kind of laid dormant for a while. Then I started to notice that other people were talking about that. And I'm like, I'm not saying that they are, but I do think it's worth breaking this down from a class perspective. And so whatever you want to do with it, that's up to you. But I do want to do more of the emphasis on just what does racism mean? What's the backdrop of it? Again, just an ignorant observation or an ignorant bias toward a specific phenotype or phenotypes. Again, skin color, hair color, skin tone, hair color, behaviors, then things like that. Those are outward characteristics of someone, of an organism or a human, which is called a phenotype. And so because someone has preconceived, ignorant, negative, stereotypical views on this particular phenotype, therefore they treat them accordingly. Now, the nuances in that I explained as well when it comes to social identity theory and in-group, out-group, and especially aversive racism. So you have to think about aversive racism and just continue to really check yourself and really self-examine and say, you know what? Did I make that decision because of this? Did I make this decision because of I already had a negative type of view toward this different phenotype, and I don't even know why. Like, there's nothing to show why I should have favored this person over this person, but it just kind of inherently or just implicitly, based on my upbringing, based on my friend group, based on what I've been told, based on the media, certain factors, some or all of those, and how that is influencing your decision making when it comes to interpersonal communications. Because then you have to think about, like, has that created a horn effect? And we'll talk more about that most likely in a future class. And has that really caused a sense of ignorance and a sense of insecurity in your own self, that you have to rely to preconceptions, to unsubstantiated preconceptions toward another phenotype in order to judge them according to that? So really interesting, really important part, really important call to action to you all to really self-examine that and see if you maybe need to reassess some things and how you think towards certain people and certain decisions you make towards certain people groups, specifically phenotypes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was class for today. Go ahead and hashtag Ask Doc. I'll zoom through some of these questions. Again, thank you for the continued support, man. Like I said, it goes up, doesn't drop off. And so y'all rocking with me. And y'all just continue to rock with me, man. I appreciate that. So be sure to, if you like what you hear, clearly you do, because people don't drop off when they're listening to these classes. It's a consecutive streak that people come and they don't drop off. So it says a lot to me, and I really appreciate it very, very much. But this can only go as far as you spread it. All right. I don't have the magic button to let everybody know that I'm giving free psychology classes about some really interesting topics and concepts every single week on my show. But you know, because you're watching it. And so what you do is you let everybody else know. You let your people know. They let their people know. It's a domino effect. There you go. And so I appreciate the liking on YouTube, the sharing, the subscribing, the commenting on YouTube. Do all those things, and that boosts the algorithm. That's what you can do in return to help me out and continue to spread these classes out to the world. I'm having people, and this is really great, man. I'm really humbled by this and thankful and really appreciative. I'm having people message me privately and say, man, I was really inspired by that class. And there's people who don't even really watch wrestling like that. They just love the concepts that I'm talking about. Yes, I integrate them with wrestling, but again, it's a much bigger emphasis on the actual topic that I'm talking about. As people who watch this every week, they are aware of. It's a, how does this integrate to wrestling? Yes, but it's a bigger topic about certain things, and that's why I have so much fun doing this with you all every single week. All right, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for the question cave. Yeah. Right. Let's get through these questions, man. What y'all got for me today? Of course, hashtag XDoc is the way to go, ladies and gentlemen. We got our first person being James. One thing I think that no one has mentioned yet is if Jey Uso won the Rumble, then shouldn't he instead be one of the main events? Doesn't the Rumble winner get the main event spot at Mania? You know, that's usually the sales pitch. But if you think about it, though, historically, there's been a lot of people who didn't get the main event spot for WrestleMania. Vince McMahon won the Royal Rumble, didn't get the main event spot. Austin won a Royal Rumble. He's won 3, but was it 90? Austin won it when? 98 and 99 and 2000. No, 97 and 98 and 2001, because 99 was Vince, who didn't main event WrestleMania. 2000 was The Rock and Big Show-ish. I mean, there was a 4-way. 2001 was Austin, and that was Austin Rocks when he didn't main event. But then you had 97 Austin, who didn't main event. You had 96 Michaels, who did main event, but you also have 95 Michaels did not main event. So, you can go down the list. I mean, Duggan won, he didn't main event. Was a stud in 89. He didn't main event. Hogan, he was the champ. Flair won it in 92. He didn't main event. So I was Hogan and Sid Justice was the main event for 92, wasn't it? So yeah, I mean, like Flair was one of the most memorable. What was that? WrestleMania? Whew, man, you're having it. 8. WrestleMania 8 was in 92, right? Yeah, Hogan and Sid Justice was the main event, I believe, with that. And Flair won the Royal Rumble and he won the World Championship. And he still, if I'm doing my trivia correct, yes, he did not main event WrestleMania. Yeah. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. And he won the championship. He won the world title. And the main event for WrestleMania for that year was Hogan and Sid Justice. And Flair went against Savage. And Savage beat Ric Flair, which was a great match, by the way. but it didn't main event WrestleMania, and Ric Flair was the one who won it all in '92. So there's been a lot of years. It's probably, I think, if I can do my trivia correctly, there's been about 20 winners of winners of the Royal Rumble who didn't main event WrestleMania. Matter of fact, okay, this is really interesting. Okay. I'm going to go through the list of people who didn't main event WrestleMania. This is really interesting. All right. Who won the Royal Rumble and what year? Let's see. Yep. So I was right. Doug in 88 didn't main event. Hogan, Stud 89. Nope. Hogan 90 was Hogan Warrior, right? Hogan 91 was Hogan Slaughter, right? Flair 92. Nope. Yokozuna. Yes, because that's when you had the he beat Hart and then Hogan Hogan beat Yoko. That was WrestleMania 9, Caesar's Palace. Bret Hart and Lex Luger. Luger didn't main event. Michaels, no 95. Austin, no 97. Vince, no 99. Yeah, I can go through. Mysterio won in 2006. It was a triple threat match. Batista won. Alberto Del Rio won in 2011. Didn't main event. Sheamus. Nope. Didn't main event. So I mean, there's plenty. Shinsuke didn't main event 2018. So yeah, there was a lot of options there of people who didn't main event. I can go through the entire list, but you get my point. There's a lot of people who didn't main event WrestleMania. James, I think you agree with with me on this, but I remember how many segments we got of R-Truth saying how Cena is his hero. Well, now that he's his heel, wouldn't it make sense for Truth to confront Cena? It'd make perfect sense. That was actually, from what I heard internally, there was some discussions of that. It clearly didn't transpire, but there were some reported conversations, or there was some conversations. It didn't go far, but there were some conversations. There weren't even plans. I'm not even going to say plans, because I said current plans with the Drew McIntyre thing, and that was bad wording because it was more internally discussed. It was an internal it was an internal discussion among the locker room people, among backstage. Many people were under the impression that Drew was winning, except for the people who knew that Drew weren't going to win, which was the handful of people who knew The Rock was going to win. And so I'm not going to, current plans was bad wording. And so current plans was not for John Cena to be a part of that segment. However, there were, from what I was told, there were some ideas being thrown around when it comes to that. So it would have made perfect sense if Cena would have just completely obliterated R-Truth. I mean, why not? Like, you're not really using R-Truth. You're not using R-Truth at all. It would have made perfect sense. It would have made perfect sense if Cena, instead of this Cody Cena every single week, it would have made perfect sense for before John Cena was going to cut the promo for Cody. Before John Cena was about to cut a promo, and Cody ended up being the one that came out anyways. R-Truth should have came out. That would have been perfect, especially since this is the last. This is the last Raw until WrestleMania. He's not scheduled until WrestleMania unless they throw something in there, which is fine. But that would have been perfect because then it would have given us some suspense. Usually the philosophy is whoever gets the heat, whoever gets the straw, whoever gets the momentum right before the pay-per-view, at the show before the pay-per-view, whoever is on top, whoever has the best momentum, who has the spot that they're looking the best, they're usually the person who's going to lose that match, whatever the pay-per-view match is. And so theoretically, John Cena is going to beat Cody Rhodes because Cody Rhodes put John Cena in a crossroads. But that would have raised some suspense to who's going to win if John Cena would have obliterated R-Truth, who is universally loved. John Cena obliterates R-Truth, and now it's making people think like, oh, okay, well, I don't know who's going to win because maybe John Cena's going to lose because he's got the heat. He looked good before WrestleMania, but he didn't look good necessarily against Cody. Like he didn't beat up Cody or he didn't like upstage Cody. He just got a lot more heat. Could that mean that he got the heat for Cody to beat him and look like a hero? Could it mean he got the heat as like a red herring because people think it's pretty telegraphed that John Cena is going to win? He could have gotten heat by saying, oh, maybe it could have caused a little bit of doubt there. And so it would have made more sense if Cena would have taken out R-Truth, but hey, here it is. Speaking of R-Truth, my favorite moment of his is when Big Show was about to knock him out, but R-Truth ended up knocking himself out and made a funny face afterwards. Her favorite R-Truth moments. Yeah, that's that one's hilarious, man. I still think, man, there's two big ones that is on the top for me. One, I would say it's tough, but I would say number one was him putting himself in the assuming that he's in the Money in the Bank match. That's when Corporate King was a thing, and they had their spot, and he came out and he cuts the promo, and this Sunday at Money in the Bank. And Kane was like, "You're not even in the match." And he's like, "Oh, my bad. That's on me." And he just calls people to crack up, man. He has a thing where he wants to rib people live. And I think it's great, man. It's fantastic. And of course, for me, number two, 1B/2, I mean, like it was very close, was the segment with him and Brock and Heyman. I mean, he cracked. I mean, he cracked Brock Lesnar, man. I mean, and he did it on purpose. I mean, he did it great. I mean, he shared before that there was a bet. There was like an inside bet that, he couldn't crack Brock Lesnar in the ring. And he was like, "Oh, I bet you I can." Basically, I'm paraphrasing. He said that he could. And he went out there and he was successful. He cracked Lesnar. And so that was fantastic. All right, let me zoom through these real quick. I can't promise that I will. Thoughts on matches in Hall of Fame now. A lot of people wanted this for a while, so it should make a lot of people happy. Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. Not a fan of it. I mean, like, you're going to have like 8-time Hall of Famers. I mean, at this point, there's a lot of, I'm sure Hogan, Andre, that's a match. And so now Hogan's going to be a 3-time Hall of Famer. Andre's going to be a 2-time Hall of Famer. It's like, is the matches, how they had the graphic They had a picture of Austin. They had a picture of Brett. It just feels like an award ceremony now. Like it's just the oh my god, OMG moment of the year goes to, like it's just now you're just going in the annals of history by having a award style match. I mean, the match was a good match, but at the same, I mean, there was a good match to choose for the moment. But at the same time, it's like, okay, so how far is this going to go? Because you did the celebrity wing before, you did the legacy wing before, you had the Warrior Award before. None of those things exist anymore. So, I mean, it's just another temporary thing that then eventually, after a few years, they're like, yeah, well, I think we're going to go ahead and end this one. So it's like, again, what this? I say this every week, guys. What's the criteria for the WWE Hall of Fame? Like, is there a board? Is there a committee? Is there like criteria? Does this person have to be retired for 5 years, like other sports Hall of Famers do? You know, their criteria. Is there a election? You know, committee? Is there a fan poll? I mean, like, what's the criteria here? Otherwise, people are just going to have to say, oh, okay, great. You're inducted in Hall of Fame because I wanted you to be this year. I wanted you to be, or maybe me and a couple other people wanted you to be. And then it's, politically advantageous to be in the Hall of Fame for a certain year. So I was like, what's the criteria, man? It's your birthday on Wednesday. Can you sing happy birthday to me? I shall. I shall sing happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Oh, that's great. I didn't appreciate most of the super chats last night, bearing as UK fans. We were very passionate, although we may be getting 3 WWE tours and WWE AW this year. We still hardly get wrestling. Super chats from Raw, the Raw show. Interesting. I mentioned Beach Ball Mania last night was highly disrespectful, but at the same time, I found it very funny. I was the one to say that this only happens in wrestling, but no. People bop around beach balls and soccer matches over there. Yeah, Beach Ball Mania was disrespectful. It was disrespectful. All right, let's see. Someone who haven't gotten as we get up out of here. Again, Axe Doc is the way to go. Right there. Do you think it's racist even though they're extremely liberal? I mean, you really can't. You can't always add one side of politics into these racial conversations because there's racism on every side of politics, and so, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that there's a specific side of the aisle that's not racist for sure. I kind of think it's racist because they boo black boxers too. That's a good point. Yeah, that's true. Wow. Deep. You're pitching me to be on your show on here. Message me and we'll chat. But I think I've told you my schedule before, and depending on what day it is, may be difficult, but I will see what I can do for you, my man. I didn't understand why the crowd cheered in the beginning but booed her when she started fighting back. Again, it doesn't make sense, y'all. Doesn't make sense. Ricky Saints won the title. Good for him, man. I saw that on the socials right before I started my show with my good brother Belata. Hey, I mean, meteoric rise, ladies and gentlemen, to the moon, as what's your face would say, Cameron Grimes. Mistype, I meant Thursday's my birthday. There you go. We'll be 38. Wonderful. I love the Cody Cena build. It's fun. I don't, man. Ugh. I don't love it. I don't love it. I think this Cody Cena build is a fast track way to say, look, we're going to give you the best that we have for now. Okay? This is what we got. So deal with it. And if you're a fan, you're going to love it regardless. Whether you like it or you don't like it, learn to love it because it's the best thing going today. Roberto, if I'm asked, what's your favorite match? Mine is the Rumble because the roster is involved in the surprises. Close second is Traditional 5-on-5 Survivor Series match. Oh, type of match is my favorite type of match. Used to be the Rumble, but the Rumble is just too. Yeah, I mean it's more. It's become more predictable. One and like the element of surprise isn't there as much anymore. That's what I liked about the Rumble match. I liked the Survivor Series match. I liked 90 when there was some stakes to it. The winners would go at the end and being the babyface winners went against the heel winners, which is cool. But I've said this before. I think there should be stakes in the Survivor Series match. The winning team should it be in a match against the current champion, whatever winning team that is. If it's a bunch of baby faces and like say for instance, if 3 members of the blood, it's not an elimination anymore either, which is okay. But I mean, make an elimination, man. Make an elimination match. It's more of a war games type of deal, but make an elimination, man. And then put stakes to it. The winners, the ones who aren't eliminated, they get to be in a match against the champion. So you can have like a sole survivor, and that person will have a world title match. You can have 3 people on the babyface team win, and it can be a 4-way. You can have 5 people on a heel team win, and it's a 6-way. You know, like do something with it. Stakes. We don't have to like the same things. Of course not. Of course not. Of course we don't have to like the same things. Of course. But I tell you what, though, I'm not a fan of this build because it just feels rushed. It feels too rushed, man. I am a traditionalist when it comes to pro wrestling, and when stuff feels rushed and there's no good story to it, Rollins in the building. What's up, my man? I'm not getting any of your unscripted and PNP notifications. I'll go back and watch this video. Interesting topic. Yeah, man. I think that you'll like it. Be sure to comment. Be sure to comment and share. All right, and subscribe as well. Well, you already subscribed, Rollins. But comment and share, as well as everybody else. Comment and share. I really enjoyed this class, man. The psychology of racism. This was a really, really informative class. I hope you thought so as well. If you thought so, first of all, here's my thing. When this music comes on, of course, you know, it's time to go. It's my exit music. However, there's so many people still rocking with me. And again, no drop. So if you are here right now, watching this right now, I want you to hashtag real one. Hashtag real one right now. All right. Comment wherever you are. Hashtag real one. Because y'all the real ones. This show has been an hour and 16 minutes just about. And y'all still here. And y'all at the end with me. So y'all get to chill and realize that y'all rocking with me, man. Y'all some real ones. Y'all some real ones. Hashtag real one, y'all. Yep, I see it. I see it. I see it. Y'all some real ones, man. Y'all with me till the end. And I'm getting a bunch of real ones now on all platforms. So, yep. Y'all the real ones. Throw it up. Because y'all are here with me till the end. If you're 5, 10, 15 minutes late, it's okay. You got a notification probably later and you jumped on and you stayed on. So guess what? You're a real one, man. You're a real one. So I appreciate you all for staying with me because y'all my real ones, man. Y'all continue to be my real ones every single week. So thank you so much for continuing to support the Pancakes and Powerslams Show. Since you are a real one, we continue to have some hashtag real ones here. So we're gonna start doing that every week, man. Y'all the real ones. Y'all appreciate y'all stick with me. Y'all stay here throughout the entire class. Y'all interact. And man, y'all just stay. Y'all just vibe. Y'all just vibe with me the entire time, man. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, dude. Think about that for a second. Give yourself some flowers for hanging out with me at 1 o'clock in the morning. Y'all some real ones, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all some real ones. All right. For my extra real ones, we about to go over to the after party. I got some exclusive information about some AEW beef. Some heat. I got some intel, man. I got some interesting intel that I received. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great show as always, man. I really, really appreciate you all. Appreciates all my supporters. Appreciate everybody staying with me through the end, man. A bunch of hashtag real ones. And here's the thing. Here's the funny part. I know that there's a bunch of people on here right now that stayed throughout the entire time. And I know people are lounging and just kind of surveying and watching the entire thing, which I think is a really interesting concept. But it happens. You have people who are just kind of here observing, don't want to interact. Interact, y'all. Interact. Man, I get hundreds of people on this show every single week. Help your boy, share, spread, interact. There's way too many people that I see live right now on here. I get hundreds of people. A few weeks ago, I had 1,400 people on the show watching live. I get hundreds of people every single week. Interact, y'all. Interact. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Too late, all right? It's too late not to interact because y'all hanging out with me at 1 o'clock in the morning. So you might as well interact. So I appreciate all your support. Ladies and gentlemen, great time as always. Until next week, enjoy your week of wrestling. God bless. And always remember, I'll do it for you. Have a good night, everybody. So long.